Dominantly cloudy, but we should see a few breaks in the cloud across the south. A hint or two of sunshine here. Further rain at times for southwest Scotland, Northern Ireland, a little bit across northwest England. Temperatures, again, well above average. Only maybe 7 or 8 in Aberdeen, but elsewhere, Belfast 10, London perhaps up to 12 Celsius. We might even hit 13 again, because that mild air is tucked into here. However, it's not going to last. This cold front sweeps across the country during Thursday night, bringing a colder feel, certainly by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into the things that have got you talking today. Now, if you are somebody who's desperately been waiting for this, you've been excited, it's out. It is the Sue Gray Partygate report. Today was the day. I've got to say though, it's the biggest letdown since Adele's Las Vegas residency, and I use the word report loosely because it was actually an update, and I've got to say, he didn't really update us on much at all. And in response, Boris addressed the Commons. Predictably, it was the same old, a bunch of politicians politically point scoring. And I accept I may be in a minority of one, but I can't help but still find all this utterly ridiculous. I waited with bated breath to hear the question that I am desperate to have answered. Boris, given the way that you and your staff behaved, it is surely clear that the risk of COVID wasn't as great as you made us mere mortals believe and fear that it was. Am I wrong? Alas, maybe that's the one question I'm never going to know the answer to. And you'll all know by now how passionate I am about the healthcare vaccine mandates. Any minute now, Sajid Javid is giving an update, and rumour has it that he may have come to his senses and be scrapping them. We'll have the latest on that. And 2 years since Brexit Day. Going well or a cause for concern? And while I'm on the subject, by the way, I can't help but wonder, is the Brexit vote one of the driving forces behind the desire by many to give Boris the boot? Or is that just the cynic in me? We'll have all that to come and more, but first, the latest news headlines.
I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will publish an updated report by Sue Gray once a Scotland Yard investigation into Number 10 parties has concluded. The senior civil servant says her publication is extremely limited due to the ongoing police investigation. Here are some of her key findings. Some of the behaviour surrounding the gatherings is difficult to justify. At least some of the gatherings represent a serious failure to observe high standards. The report identified failures of leadership and judgment by parts of Number 10 and the Cabinet Office. Some staff felt unable to raise concerns about behaviours they witnessed at work. The Prime Minister says he's sorry for the things the government did not get right.
But firstly, I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. This pandemic was hard for everyone. We asked people across this country to make the most extraordinary sacrifices, not to meet loved ones, not to visit relatives before they died. And I understand the anger that people feel. Mr. Speaker, I get it and I will fix it.
Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer appealed to Conservative MPs in the Commons, telling them they know Boris Johnson is not fit for office.
They know better than anyone how unsuitable he is for high office. Many of them knew in their hearts that we would inevitably come to this one day. And they know that as night follows day, continuing his leadership will mean further misconduct, cover-up and deceit. It is only they that can end this farce. The eyes of the country are upon them. They will be judged by the decisions they take now.
The Foreign Secretary has announced new legislation that she says will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we've ever had. Liz Truss is travelling with the Prime Minister to Kiev tomorrow for crisis talks with the Ukrainian president amid fears over Russia's military build-up at the border. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is visiting counterparts in Hungary, Slovenia and Croatia with the aim of de-escalating tensions over Ukraine by strengthening links with allies. Liz Truss says the new legislation, which will be in place by the 10th of February, would significantly strengthen the government's ability to deal with Russia's aggression.
This will be the toughest sanction regime against Russia we have ever had, and it is the most radical departure in approach since leaving the European Union. Those in and around the Kremlin will have nowhere to hide. We will make sure that those who share responsibility for the Kremlin's aggressive and destabilising action will share in bearing a heavy cost.
The government is expected to announce a U-turn over compulsory COVID vaccines for NHS workers. The Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, is reportedly going to scrap the policy over fears it could lead to a major staffing crisis. And he's due to make a statement in the Commons shortly. While speaking to reporters in Essex this morning, the Prime Minister said all healthcare professionals should get a vaccine. A British woman who was found guilty of lying about being gang raped in Cyprus has had her conviction overturned. The woman, who's now 21, was given a 4-month suspended sentence in 2020 for public mischief after withdrawing her allegation. The Supreme Court of Cyprus found she'd not been given a fair trial. Footballer Christian Eriksen has signed for Premier League club Brentford 7 months after suffering a cardiac arrest on the pitch while playing for Denmark. The 29-year-old, who's been fitted with an internal defibrillator, hasn't played since he collapsed at Euro 2020. The former Tottenham midfielder has signed a 6-month deal. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as we get it. Now, though, it's back to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock. My panel, Martin Daubney, who's the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, Victoria Borick, who is the former Deputy Mayor of London to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and Nigel Nelson, who's the Political Editor of the Sunday People. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co by now. It's not just about us and our thoughts, it's about you at home and yours. You can get in touch with me, GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. I have to say, Stephen, he's not messing around. Quick off the blocks there. First email in. Good evening, Dewbs. I wouldn't use that report for toilet paper. says Stephen. Well, there you go. Do keep your thoughts coming in. Let me know what you think about this whole Partygate thing. I do say report, but it's not a report, really. It's just an update. But let's get into it, shall we? Whatever we want to call it tonight, because it has been released. It looks at just 4 of 16 alleged events, either 12, have been investigated by the Metropolitan Police. Let's remind ourselves what was in it, shall we? Some behaviour was found to be difficult to justify. There was serious failure to observe high standards that were expected. There were failures of leadership in number 10 and the Cabinet Office, and some staff felt unable to raise concerns. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson apologised in the Commons this afternoon. Let's have a listen to that.
I want to say sorry. And I'm sorry for the things we simply didn't get right, and also sorry for the way that this matter has been handled. And it's no use saying that this or that was within the rules, and it's no use saying that people were working hard. This pandemic was hard for everyone. But, Mr. Speaker, it isn't enough to say sorry. This is a moment when we must look at ourselves in the mirror and we must learn. I will be saying more in the coming days about the steps we will take to improve the number 10 operation and the work of the Cabinet Office, to strengthen Cabinet government and to improve the vital connection between number 10 and Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I get it and I will fix it.
I get it and I will fix it. Well, Labour leader Keir Starmer was having none of that.
Even now, he is hiding behind a police investigation into criminality, into his home and his office. But, Prime Minister, the British public aren't fools. They never believed a word of it. They think the Prime Minister should do the decent thing and resign. Of course he won't, because he is a man without shame. And just as he has done throughout his life, he's damaged everyone and everything around him along the way.
Ouch. Well, even former Prime Minister Theresa May got involved to ask Boris Johnson whether he felt he was exempt from the rules.
What the Gray report does show is that number 10 Downing Street was not observing the regulations they had imposed on members of the public. So either my right honourable friend had not read the rules, or didn't understand what they meant, and others around him, or they didn't think the rules applied to number 10. Which was it?
Well, our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, joins us more. Good evening to you, Darren. What's the latest?
Hello, Michelle. Well, the latest is actually in the last couple of minutes. Downing Street have said that they will now publish, or it is their intention to publish, the full Sue Gray report when it comes. After, of course, the Metropolitan Police have carried out their investigations. We've known, haven't we, really, since this morning, that what we've got today from Sue Gray is essentially an initial update rather than the full report she seems very keen to publish. The Prime Minister, though, when he was repeatedly asked about this in the Commons, didn't seem to be terribly clear that that is what he intended to do. It was interesting that immediately after the Prime Minister sat down, Downing Street put out a statement clarifying that they would do so. But in the end, I think Sue Gray's report was certainly heavier on criticism than many had expected of the leadership and the events that went on inside number 10, failing that some of those events were not justified or acceptable, and that there was an excessive use of alcohol. That is why the Prime Minister, as you've seen there, has said that he is going to change some of the structures around how Downing Street operates, and indeed a more collegiate cabinet form of governments. I expect as well that we may well see people resign in the days and weeks to come. But it didn't stop the opposition parties from saying that the Prime Minister needs to go now, that Sue Gray, in essence, has found that the rules would not adhere to, and that the very fact the Met are investigating more than 8 of these alleged parties, that the Prime Minister needs to accept responsibility. And an incredible parliamentary drama, not just Theresa May laying into her successor, but the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford, essentially being kicked out of the Commons chamber for refusing to withdraw that he claimed the Prime Minister had misled Parliament and was a liar. Let's have a watch.
Can I just say, I take it the honourable member has withdrawn it, the right honourable member.
that the Prime Minister may have inadvertently misled the House.
But, order. To help me, to help the House, you withdrawn your earlier comment and replaced it with inadvertently.
It's not my fault if the Prime Minister can't be trusted to tell the truth.
Under the power given to me by Standing Order number 43, I order the honourable member to withdraw immediately from the House. From the House. Rivera, it's all right, we don't need to bother. Right, let us move on. Andrew Mitchell.
Now, there were an awful lot of Conservative MPs as well who stood up to defend the leader, insisting that he needs to get on with the job, that he makes the big calls, such as the vaccine programme, getting Brexit done, etc., and that the government should be allowed now to draw a line under all of this and focus on what they would claim are the issues that matter to you and I and to the public. But, Michelle, that wasn't true of everyone. There were several that cast doubts on the Prime Minister's future, not least of all the former Chief Whip and International Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell, who all but said that he has handed in his letter calling for the Prime Minister to go.
I'm deeply concerned by these events and very concerned indeed by some of the things he has said from that dispatch box and has said to the British public and our constituents. When he kindly invited me to see him 10 days ago, I told him that I thought he should think very carefully about what was now in the best interests of our country and of the Conservative Party. And I have to tell him he no longer enjoys my support.
Andrew Mitchell speaking there. In the end, I think, Michelle, to sum up, Sue Gray's preliminary report, I think, was more critical than many people had thought of what had gone on inside Downing Street. And it must be said, I think the Prime Minister's reaction in Parliament, at one point essentially accusing Keir Starmer of not investigating Jim Savile properly, which is a such an unfounded internet rumour, and also accusing the Labour front bench of drug taking, certainly did not impress many Conservative MPs. They thought he struck the wrong tone and in some ways made things worse. And this is the preliminary report. This isn't even the kind of more serious allegations that have been levelled against Downing Street. They have yet to come in the Met investigations and in Sue Gray's full report. The idea that the Prime Minister is out of the woods, well, that's for the birds, to use a lot of political cliches.
Dan McCaffrey, thanks very much for your insights. Let's start, shall we, with the panel. I've got to say, by the way, you guys are getting your emails are flying in, so I'll come to some of those in just a second. But for now, Victoria, your thoughts?
Well, obviously, you know, we've seen the first bit of the Sue Gray's report. The Prime Minister has apologised. He says he accepts all the points made by Sue Gray, and we're going to see some changes. And that's, you know, I think a lot of people find what's happened very unedifying, they don't really support it. But Sue's been absolutely clear, as far as I can see, and obviously the ones that she has more concerns about are going to the Metropolitan Police, so we're going to hear more. But I mean, the only quick point is, of course, one, like journalists, Downing Street was not in lockdown. You were key workers. The workers at Downing Street were key workers, and therefore they weren't actually subject to exactly the same rules, but I think most of us would think that they would follow them. They would observe all the protocols that everybody else. I mean, the Prime Minister has absolutely gone on record several times that he acknowledges the sacrifices made by people, and I think many people are extremely unhappy. But in fairness to those people, yes, I can see that in a way they might have used the garden, and there was obviously some dispute about that, but I think what they did was unedifying.
Nigel Nelson?
Well, I mean, as a journalist who was also a key worker, I certainly did obey the rules all the way during lockdown. And certainly unlike number 10, and didn't have any parties or anything like that. I think that this is not enough to actually unseat the Prime Minister. My own view is that he should have gone without Sue Gray, on the basis that we now know that he did know about parties. He lied to Parliament about that. He said he didn't. And so the question is, what happens next? The Tory backbench committee, the 1922 committee, they're meeting tonight. Boris Johnson will address them. We'll get a chance to see what the reaction of Tory MPs is. I can say, when I was sitting in the chamber waiting for him to come in today, that Tories didn't seem to be quite so sort of cheery and upbeat as they have been at other occasions. questions. But the most serious thing from this update is what we do now know is that our Prime Minister is being investigated by the police for criminality.
No, that's not absolutely true.
That is absolutely true because two of the parties that the police are investigating, they're investigating on the basis of criminality, one of which is the May the 20th one he attended. The other one was a November one in his flat.
These are allegations, and I think the one thing about this country is that you are innocent until proven guilty.
I said investigating.
Yeah, and in fairness, what we're talking about is things that probably have a fixed penalty as their fine. So I think, one's got to be quite careful about what you're alleging here.
Well, what I'm alleging is the police are investigating criminality that involves two parties. Well, no, it's not potential. They are investigating that. These are allegations of. I appreciate that, but that is what they're investigating. And so all I'm sort of observing from the Sougray report is that is what our Prime Minister is facing. He is facing police interviews, and it's a rather unedifying spectacle to be in that situation.
Martin Daubney.
Well, we were promised a bloodbath, weren't we? And we got a nothing burger. As far as the report goes, I've seen more damning school reports, mainly my own. I think Boris got out of jail once again. The Houdini of politics will fight on. He'll survive again. Journalists will stamp their feet again. The Labour backbench, the front bench will be furious again, and the public will shrug and move on again. And I think the problem with this cycle of trying to play the player and not the ball is that the more they go for Boris, the more the public will become bored of it and they won't care. And I predict that Boris will come out of this better than before. That's an incredible thing to say. I'm no fan of Boris Johnson, particularly on Brexit. We'll come to that later on. But I just think he's getting out of jail time and time again. They couldn't get him on this. I think people are just now to think, let's just get on with doing Brexit and get on making Britain great.
Do you agree with that, Nigel? Oh, actually, you hold that thought.
I think I will.
Yeah, hold that thought because we're going to cross live to the Commons now where Health Secretary
Face
Sajid
coverings
Javid.
are no longer mandatory. Organisations no longer have to require the NHS COVID pass. And from today, there's no limit on the number of visitors allowed to care homes. Week by week, we are carefully moving from our COVID response from one of rules and restrictions back to one of personal responsibility. We're able to do this because of the defences that we've built throughout this pandemic in vaccines and antivirals, in testing and surveillance. We know, of course, that COVID-19 is here to stay. While some countries remain stuck on a zero COVID strategy and others think about how they will safely open up, here we are showing the way forward and showing the world what successfully living with COVID looks like. The principle we're applying is the same principle that's guided our actions throughout this pandemic, and that is to achieve the maximum protection of public health with the minimum intrusion in people's everyday lives. To me, that is what learning to live with COVID is all about. Even with this progress, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we must of course remain vigilant. While overall cases and hospitalisations continue to fall, we are seeing rises in cases in primary and secondary school children. Part of living with COVID means living with new variants and subvariants. Our world-class health surveillance operations are currently keeping a close watch on a subvariant of Omicron called BA2, which the UK Health Security Agency has marked as a variant under investigation, one below a variant of concern. 1,072 genomically confirmed cases of BA2 have been identified in England, while early data from Denmark suggests that BA2 may be more transmissible. There is currently no evidence that it is any more severe. In addition, an initial analysis of vaccine effectiveness against BA2 reveals a similar level of protection to symptomatic infection compared to BA1, the original variant of Omicron, which underlines once again the importance of being vaccinated against COVID-19 and the imperative to get the booster if you're eligible. Mr. Deputy Speaker, nowhere is vaccination more important than in our health and social care system. Throughout this pandemic, we've always put the safety of vulnerable people first, and we always will do. It has always been this government's expectation that everyone gets vaccinated against COVID-19, especially those people working in health and social care settings who have a professional duty to do so. When designing policy, there will always be a balance of opportunities and risks, and responsible policy making must take that balance into account. When we consulted on vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and wider social care settings, the evidence showed that the vaccine effectiveness against infection from the dominant Delta variant has been or was between 65 and 80%, depending on which of the vaccines that you had received. It was clear that vaccination was the very best way to keep vulnerable people safe from Delta. Because quite simply, if you're not infected, you can't infect someone else. Balanced against this clear benefit was the risk that there would always be some people who would not do the responsible thing and choose to remain unvaccinated, and in doing so, choosing to walk away from their jobs in health and care. Despite it being their choice to leave their jobs, we have to consider the impact on the workforce in NHS and social care settings, especially at a time when we already have a shortage of workers and near full employment across the economy. In December, I argued, and this House overwhelmingly agreed, that the weight of clinical evidence in favour of vaccination as a condition of deployment outweighed the risks to the workforce. It was the right policy at the time, supported by the clinical evidence, and the government makes no apology for it. It has also proven to be the right policy in retrospect, given the severity of Delta. Since we launched the consultation on vaccination as a condition of deployment in the NHS and wider social care settings in September, there has been a net increase of 127,000 people working across the NHS who have done the right thing and got jabbed, becoming part of the 19 out of 20 NHS workers who have done their professional duty. During the same time, we have also seen a net increase of 32,000 people getting jabbed in social care, including 22,000 people in care homes and 10,000 people working in domiciliary care. I'm grateful to the millions of health and care colleagues who have come forward to do the right thing, and the health and care leaders who have supported them. Together, they've played a vital part in raising our wall of protection even higher and keeping thousands of vulnerable people out of hospital this summer. When we laid the November regulations, the Delta variant represented 99% of infections. A few short weeks later, we discovered Omicron, which has now become the dominant variant in the UK, representing over 99% of infections. Incredibly, over a third of the UK's total number of COVID-19 cases have happened in just the last 8 weeks. Given that Delta has been replaced, it's only right that our policy on vaccination as a condition of deployment is reviewed. So I ask for fresh advice, including from the UK Health Security Agency and England's Chief Medical Officer. In weighing up the risks and opportunities of this policy once again, there are two new factors. The first is that our population as a whole is now better protected against hospitalisation from COVID-19. Omicron's increased infectiousness means that at the peak of the recent winter spike, 1 in 15 people had a COVID-19 infection, according to the ONS. Around 24% of England's population has had at least one positive COVID-19 test. And as of today in England, 84% of people over 12 have had a primary course of COVID-19 vaccines, and 64% have been boosted, including over 90% of over 50s. The second factor is that the dominant variant, Omicron, is intrinsically less severe. When taken together with the first factor, that we now have greater population protection, the evidence shows that the risk of presentation to emergency care or hospital admission with Omicron is approximately half of that for Delta. Given these dramatic changes, it is not only right, but responsible to revisit the balance of risks and opportunities that guided our original decision last year. While vaccination remains our very best line of defence against COVID-19, I believe that it is no longer proportionate to require vaccination as a condition of deployment through statute. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, today I am announcing that we will launch a consultation on ending vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and all social care settings. Subject to the responses and the will of this House, the Government will revoke the regulations. I have always been clear that our rules must remain proportionate and balanced. And of course, should we see another dramatic change in the virus, it would be only responsible to review this policy again. Madam Deputy Speaker, some basic facts remain, of course. Vaccines save lives, and everyone working in health and social care has a professional duty to be vaccinated against COVID-19. So while we will seek to end vaccination as a condition of deployment in health and social care settings using statute, I am taking the following steps. First, I have written to professional regulators operating across health to ask them to urgently review current guidance to registrants on vaccinations, including COVID-19, to emphasise their professional responsibilities in this area. Second, I have asked the NHS to review its policies on the hiring of new staff and the deployment of existing staff, taking into account their vaccination status. And third, I've asked my officials to consult on updating my department's code of practice, which applies to all CQC registered providers of all healthcare and social care settings in England. They will consult on strengthening requirements in relation to COVID-19, including reflecting the latest advice on infection protection control. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, our vital work to promote the uptake of vaccines continues. And I'm sure that the whole House will want to join me in thanking NHS trusts and care providers for their relentless efforts in putting patient safety first. Madam Deputy Speaker, I also wish to thank the Shadow Health Secretary and the party opposite for their support of the Government's approach to this policy area. One of the reasons that we have the highest vaccine uptake rates in the world is because of the confidence our vaccines that comes from this place, from all sides of the House. We may not agree on everything, but when it comes to vaccination, together we have put the national interest first. It is now in our national interest to embark on this new phase of the pandemic, where we keep the British people safe, while showing the world how we can successfully learn to live with COVID-19. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Secretary of State. Here.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement today.
As usual, a fudge.
Well, there you go. That was Sajid Javid talking live in those comments. Cheers from Martin Daubney. That is the loud hand clap you can hear to my right-hand side. It will not be a surprise to viewers, regular viewers, to know that I've campaigned for a while now against these vaccine mandates. I found it appalling that anyone should be coerced, forced into receiving a vaccination that they don't want to have for fear of losing their job. We've spoken out about this a lot. So many people will be delighted by this kind of change in the picture right now, and I want to talk to one of them. You might have heard of the NHS 100K. The collection of lots of people working within the healthcare settings that have come out and spoken against this. Joining me now is one of the founders of that campaign, Cathy Jones. Good evening to you. There you go. Cathy, you just heard Sajid Javid there basically saying that it's no longer proportionate, if I quote him directly, these vaccine mandates. Your reaction?
Delighted. We never thought it was proportionate, and it was an unfair mandate. So many people have been so worried and anxious about losing their careers, their livelihoods, their homes on this mandate. So absolutely delighted that that they are going to review the situation and it won't be a condition of deployment. It's been a long road and emotional and delighted.
And Cathy, what has it been like for you? Because this hasn't been an easy campaign to run. It's divided opinion on lots of sides, and I perhaps guess that it still might do that. So what has life been like for you? Because lots of your peers, your colleagues will have taken the vaccine and will think that people like yourselves should have done the same. If I quote some of what Sajid Javid was saying just now in the comments, getting vaccinated is the responsible thing. It's your professional duty. Your thoughts to that?
Well, our professional duty is to our patients and to keep them safe, and that's what we do. That's what we've always done, alongside giving them the right to choose what medical treatments that they have, and that privilege was not afforded to us. It was, you have the medical treatment or you don't. So we've never seen it as being the right thing to do. So it's been a tough few months since it was first announced. It's been difficult to be a voice that didn't want to go ahead and be vaccinated when so many of our colleagues did, but I'm just delighted that they're going to move forward and take this away as a condition of deployment, because it was just never the right or proportionate thing to do.
Yeah, Cathy, congratulations on your campaign and best wishes going forward, and thank you for all the care that you have provided to many people that need it, especially at the start of all of this when we didn't know much about it. So thank you for everything that you've done. There you go, Nigel Nelson, you know, not proportionate, no longer proportionate. Sajid Javid, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've always been against mandatory vaccination. Work is a right, and certainly you shouldn't deprive people of work by forcing them to get vaccinated. A number of things from there that become a bit confusing. He was talking about a consultation. Well, he's got to get a move on, because people who weren't vaccinated in the NHS needed their first jab first jab on Thursday, and dismissal warnings were due to go out on Friday. So you must get moving on that. The other thing about, I think, with mandatory vaccination, there's got to be consequences for choosing not to have a vaccination.
What does that mean?
What that means is, I do think vaccine passports then. So on a voluntary basis, whereby things that aren't a right, like going to a restaurant, cinema, a pub or something like that.
A segregated society.
A business could actually decide whether they want to have vaccine passports or not. Whether customers should prove, just basically prove that they've been vaccinated. And then for the rest of us, we could decide which sort of pub or restaurant we want to go to. Some may not take that up, but others might. So if, for instance, I wanted to go to a pub where I knew people had been vaccinated, I could choose that. If I didn't care very much, as I'm sure, Michelle, you wouldn't, you could go to a pub where there's no kind of compulsion to actually be certificated.
Before I bring Martin in, because I know he wants to come in, just briefly help me understand what evidence, when you call for vaccine passports, my understanding of the evidence is that these things have made very little difference to things like case rates, transmission. There's been actually, I think, a paper from the Scottish Government that said actually they were not very effective at all. So what are you basing that call for consequences on? On
the basis that vaccination is our best protection against COVID. No, you're absolutely right. There's still transmission if you've been vaccinated, but there's much less transmission. Mm-hmm. So the point basically is that the vaccinated must have rights too. I don't want to sit in a cinema next to a coughing and spluttering anti-vaxxer, and it is my right
hang on. I'm sorry. In fact, Martin, I'm going to shut up because I'm desperate to... I don't want to take over the whole conversation. Martin, coughing and spluttering anti-vaxxers, Nigel don't want to sit next to. Thoughts?
Well, we've already seen that the vaccine is hardly an effective method of stopping transmission of COVID. Otherwise, why are we... So scientifically baseless. In terms of liberty, a huge backward step for the UK. We should not become a show-as-you-paper nation. That's the sort of totalitarian regimes that we actually fought and defeated many decades ago. But back to what Sajid Javid said there, it's a huge, huge victory this is. It's a real moment in time. Dr. Steve James and Cathy Jones, I think, are true heroes They weren't bullied, they weren't forced, they weren't strong-armed or coerced. They used science, they used common sense, and it was absolutely politically baseless and dangerous and cruel to suggest that added to 100,000 shortfall of staff already, we were going to lose another 100,000. What kind of imbecile would suggest that? The answer is somebody who's lost sight of the science and has let dogma get in the way. This is a huge moment. And I think we should celebrate this. And I would like to commend all of those people, Alan Miller, the Together Project. I've campaigned against this since the start as a journalist, and the Reclaim Party have stood venomously against this. This is a huge, huge victory, and I salute it.
Can I counter with one of the things?
Of course you can. All views welcome.
Just to say that obviously the NHS does require most of its staff to be vaccinated against a whole range of vaccinations. So I can see from the NHS point of view.
Like what?
Oh, Hep B. There's a whole list of things you have to be vaccinated. You have to have your TB. You have to have your measles.
But the argument to that would be that there's a long-standing vaccine, so there's lots of safety data for them. Their vaccines actually, in the most part, would stop transmission and things like that. It's now beyond evident.
Well, in fairness, also Sajid Javid seemed to say there that new joiners would be required to have the vaccination as a condition of joining.
I think
so. If he's going to their regulatory bodies to actually sort that out, it'll be the same as Victoria's talking about with the other jab.
There will be some people who will prefer to be treated by somebody who they know has been vaccinated.
Why?
I mean, personally, I'm not pro-mandatory vaccinations, but you know, for the sake of our discussion today, and I'm sure viewers will have a lot of views, listening to people, I know there are those who would be happier that we did continue to encourage the NHS staff to be vaccinated, because that gives confidence. You know, some people feel that they would like to be treated by somebody who had been vaccinated.
I really think this notion of this notion of, oh, I'm about to die, but by the way, doctor, have you had your 3 jabs and a booster? No, okay, I'll choose to die. It's ludicrous. It's a complete false analogy. Giving people the choice to choose a doctor. I mean, really? We're 100,000 short already.
But are you...
Sajid Javid was proposing sacking another 100,000.
But are you, because you just said, Martin just said something like there'll be people that want to be treated by someone that's been vaccinated, and you said, like me. Would you not want to be treated by a healthcare worker that's not vaccinated?
I would rather not. That's absolutely right. I don't think I would go as far...
Help me understand why.
I still think that when Martin was... Sorry, going back to Martin's point about transmission, you're absolutely right. You can still get the virus if you've been vaccinated, even if you've been boosted. I accept that, but you are much less likely to get it. So although you get 80% protection against serious illness and hospitalisation,
for a few weeks,
and you get a slightly lower amount when it comes down to transmission, but you still do have some protection.
What about natural immunity? We could test for natural immunity in an NHS staff.
Which doesn't work with Omicron versus Delta.
They have that, but that's been completely overlooked because it's been jab first.
But it doesn't work with Omicron.
What doesn't? Natural immunity?
Yeah, that if you've had Delta, you can easily catch Omicron again, as we've just seen, and it's why 100,000 people a day are still testing positive for Omicron.
You can have the jab and get Omicron again. You can have the jab and get Omicron again.
Well, you get anything again. It is possible, but it's much less likely, is the point I'm making. So, I mean, a vaccine is not an absolute guarantee you won't catch COVID. I appreciate that. But it certainly means that your chances of catching COVID are much less.
And if you're in a care home, there will be some people who'll be very nervous, particularly after the previous incidents of care homes. There will be some people very nervous. They would like to feel the people looking after their vulnerable members of their family have been vaccinated. And I think it's quite fair that we should have that debate.
Do you know what I do feel? And I will need to head up to a break now. I feel, and I say this is my personal view before I get into trouble, I feel like we've been massively oversold on what this vaccine can do, because I think that people genuinely, I absolutely appreciate that your sentiments are genuine and valid. This whole sense of I would rather be treated with someone that's vaccinated because they are less likely to give me a disease that's likely going to kill me. That is the sentiment that I'm hearing from people. But actually, the most vulnerable in society are now triple boosted and will possibly go on having their boosters, whatever the programme looks like going forward. And I just feel that there's people that are kind of in the mindset that if someone is unvaccinated, they are a threat. And I have to say, I didn't like Sajid Javid's language. You know, do the responsible thing, do the right thing, do your professional duty. I don't like this
But
division.
it is all those things. It is the responsible thing. It is the sort of thing that if you are a health professional, you ought to do.
Well, I would say to Sajid
I'm just against the
Javid,
mandate. I'm against the fact that people have to do it by law because they have a right to refuse.
I would say
but that right carries consequences.
I would say to Sajid Javid, if he's that bothered about doing the right thing and the responsible thing and all the rest of it, I'd be looking inwards to make sure that actually I'm mitigating the risk as much as possible, using things like proper and effective PPE, proper and safe ventilation, if that's the thing that we're all supposed to be focusing on. And by the way, before I do head to the break, I can't help but ponder, what happens to these care workers then?
Yeah.
Because what I would like to see now, if this is the evidence, if this is the science, if this is what's going to happen in the NHS, well, sorry, but I think that then we should be having conversations about moving that out to care workers. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts there, because I imagine that one will divide opinion. Anyway, going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get into some of your views, because so many of you have been sharing your opinions on lots of those topics. And also, I want to talk a little bit about Brexit, if I may. So I'll see you in just a couple of minutes.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. I will just take a brief second to remind you of who my panel is, because I know that some of you listen instead of watch. So you have me, Michelle Dewberry. You have Victoria Borwick, who is the former Deputy Mayor of London to Boris Johnson, Martin Daubney, who is the Deputy Leader of the Reclaim Party, and Nigel Nelson, who's the political editor for the Sunday People. Clive has emailed in. I've got to say, lots of you talking tonight about what you're watching and listening to. Clive says, what about the care workers? Get them back into work, and will compensation be offered as they were forced out of their jobs? Interesting. I've got to say, Clive, I feel very strongly about this, actually. The picture has now changed. So in my mind, I would like these care workers to be allowed back into their jobs. Let's see what else. Nigel says, I would rather be treated by a doctor who hasn't had the jab than not be treated at all. Got to say, I completely agree with you there, Nigel. Anyway, what time is it? Yeah, 7:15. Time flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to squeeze in another topic before I say farewell. Brexit. Let's talk about that, shall we? A new Brexit freedoms bill will be brought forward by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Why? Some might say to distract from Partygate. Others might say it's because it's a 2-year anniversary of Brexit. The government is aiming to cut £1 billion worth of red tape for businesses to ease regulatory burdens, remove outdated EU laws and level up the country. I could keep reading, but quite frankly, I'm not going to, because instead, I'm going to talk to Martin Daubney instead. Talk to me. What do you think to this?
Well, 2 years ago, right now, Michelle, you and I were gearing up to get on that stage at Parliament Square, weren't we? To sort of sing a national anthem and be jubilant, and the whole square, over 100,000 people. Of course, the BBC said there were about 4 people there.
They did, I remember that.
We get used to that. But back to the matter in hand, this Brexit freedoms bill, I think is another example of how Boris hasn't got Brexit done, and he's throwing red meat to the press to try and distract from the Grey report. So he's saying £1 billion of red tape will be severed to more easily remove us from EU law. Well, I thought we were meant to be separated from EU law already. We clearly aren't. We didn't get Brexit done on fishing. Our communities around the coastal areas of Britain feel betrayed. Northern Ireland is a constant thorn in the side. Northern Ireland it was a complete disaster in terms of the separation. And of course, we never left the European Convention on Human Rights, which to this day haunts this government on illegal immigration and affects our ability to self-govern, control our borders and return illegal arrivals. So it's a 2-year day anniversary, which I think comes with bittersweet moments. There's still a lot of work to do, but I think the country now wants to get over this Partygate nonsense and get back to the real work of governance and getting the job done.
Nigel Nelson?
My objection is rather different. First of all, I accept Brexit. I was on the other side, I was a Remainer, but Brexit is a fact of life and we must make the best of it. This particular bill doesn't. What happened after Brexit was that EU law was simply taken wholesale into British law. Parliament would then look at each particular part of it and decide which bits we wanted to keep and which we didn't. What this bill does is take Parliament out of it and allow ministers to make those decisions. They could just put a red line through laws they don't like. They can downgrade environmental protections, health and safety protections. Parliament is the right place to be debating this one.
But I think it's been quite clear, as Boris has said, that actually some regulations will be much stronger. He's already spoken out in favour of protection for animals, more relevant legislation that's right for this country now post-Brexit, legislation on gene editing, pro-growth, points that you've made.
But as a former MP, do you not think MPs should be the ones who are actually scrutinising this?
Certainly, I think it's got to come back to the House for the final say. I agree with you.
What do you think, though, Martin? Because I actually think some of the criticism, because a lot of people, in fact, actually, no, let me change my question. How much do you think Brexit plays a role in this kind of desperate bid to oust Boris Johnson?
Well, there has been a lot of talk about, is this all a Remainer plot? Lord Adonis said famously, if Boris goes, Brexit goes. And then the conspiracy theorists went into overdrive. It's not as simple as that. But, I think it was quite interesting today how the most effective critic of Boris Johnson was Theresa May. A former Tory Prime Minister and, of course, a disastrous Remainer who almost sold us to Brussels. But I don't think it is a huge conspiracy, but there are still great fault lines in Brexit which haven't been delivered. And I've returned again to things like fishing and Northern Ireland and illegal immigration. We voted to take back control in 2016 of this, yes, our laws, our ability to self-govern, to be sovereign, to control our borders, and we blatantly have not achieved that.
Well, surely this is our opportunity.
But there has been a small matter of a global pandemic
that
has distracted. And I do just feel that a lot of people are unrealistic in their expectations because I hear all this, Boris hasn't done this levelling up, Boris has not done that with Brexit. I think, hang about, what? He's been, we've just had a global pandemic that has brought pretty much every single country globally to its knees. Give the guy an opportunity, crikey. Do you not agree?
Absolutely. Been really successful, obviously, with the vaccine, and the freedom of being in Brexit has meant that we have been able to exploit our own expertise. We've got that opportunity now for building on medical technology. There's so many good news stories that now is our chance to exploit those and really get the country moving again.
Yeah, lots of you emailing in, by the way, about that conversation that we've just been having about the vaccine mandate. Janet says, sorry, Michelle, I do not agree with you. What does this mean? We can now ask when we go into hospital whether or not the staff treating us have had a vaccine. She says, I'm in my 70s and I don't want a dose of COVID when I've been responsible and done everything to protect myself and others. And she says, what about those that are immune suppressed and couldn't have the vaccine? Are they supposed to be treated by people who could pass on COVID to them in hospital? Janet, what I would say to that is that even those with the vaccine contract and pass on COVID. And, you know, there's a lot of patient-to-patient transferring as well. This isn't just about staff to patient and vice versa. Tony says, Sajid Javid's statement changes nothing, as he is now seeking to achieve vaccination by making it a future consideration when employing staff and reviewing providers. Tony, what I would say to that is, I guess, you can kind of, you know, make a choice, I guess, if this is a condition of employment and you're about to embark on that employment, and that's a conversation and a thought process to have. I guess my sentiment has always been when you employ a team and a future pipeline of staff, because don't forget, by the way, this is applied to students as well. It's not just people in the role now, it's students that need to do placements. You know, you cannot coerce. Nobody will ever be able to convince me that you are able to coerce somebody to getting injected with something that they don't want to be injected with. And you will coerce them to such a point that you will take away their livelihood from them. I've thought about this long and hard. I've talked about it long and hard on this programme, and I just don't think there's anything or anyone that would convince me with the picture as it is today that that is the right thing to do. Lots of you also getting in contact about the Boris Johnson situation. Peter says, whoever broke the COVID rules should suffer the same penalties as everyone else. Whoever broke the rules regarding alcohol in the workplace should suffer the consequences and be punished accordingly. He goes on to say that drinking alcohol at work is normally classed as gross misconduct and is punishable by losing your job. There you go. Let's have a little Nigel Farage. I've just seen him enter the studio. Nigel Farage, good evening to you. We've just been talking about Boris Johnson and I can't help but wonder your thoughts. You do talking pints. I'm going to bet you a pint. I bet that Boris Johnson isn't going to resign. What do you reckon?
Or he might not resign, no, but he's going to be forced out at some point. I mean, this agony could go on until the 5th of May, when we have the local elections, when they'll almost certainly lose Wandsworth in London. They could even lose Westminster. I think there'll be Tory abstentionism on a literally massive scale in that set of local elections. He's doomed. It's just a matter of time. And, you know, Michelle, you can argue, look, these people all work together. They were under stress. They had a drink after work. Who cares? But it's the sheer dishonesty. It's the cover-up. It's the excuses. And frankly, it's the lies. And however much Tory MPs may try to rally around him, out there in the country, he's lost people's trust, and he's not going to regain it.
Right, let's pick a date and have a bet. Let's pick a date in the near future, and I'm saying he's going to be in position. You're saying he's going to be gone. What's this date? We're betting a pint. There's a pint at stake, Nigel.
Well, I'd like more than one pint, obviously, but I mean, he'll be gone. He'll be gone by July the 1st. All right. July the 1st. There you go. That's Nigel's prediction. July the 1st. He said by July the 1st he'll be gone. Yep.
I don't share that view. Very briefly, because my time's up. Martin, yes or no? Do you agree with me or Nigel? July the 1st. Will he be gone or not?
I think he's the Houdini of politics. I just think he'll dodge the noose time and time again.
Nigel Nelson.
He'll be gone
1st.
by then.
Victoria?
No, Boris will be there and driving us forward and getting Brexit done and rebuilding this country.
Well, there you go. That's all we've got time for. Nigel, Victoria and Martin, thank you very much for your company. Thank you at home for yours. And you heard it. I've put it out there. I reckon July the 1st, Boris Johnson will still be our Prime Minister. There's a pint riding on it. Get in touch and let me know what you think. Do you agree with me? Or do you agree with Nigel? Have a good evening and I'll see you tomorrow.
Evening. Felt cold in the wind today, but tomorrow, although still windy, will be an awful lot milder. The wind's still pretty lively across northern Scotland, where, of course, we had all the storm damage through the weekend. That storm system's cleared away. High pressure is trying to build in, but we've got these weather fronts toppling their way in from the northwest, bringing cloud and outbreaks of rain across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland this evening, and trickling into northern England and North Wales, and eventually some of that rain turning up across the Midlands and maybe South Wales, but it'll be fairly light and patchy. Quite a misty, murky night as well, with a lot of low cloud. Turning quite chilly out there this evening, but by dawn, temperatures ticking back up to 7 or 8 Celsius, so a pretty mild start. A grey start as well. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle for northwest England and Wales, and at times for Northern Ireland during Tuesday. It will be windy, especially in that northeastern corner. Not as windy as the weekend, but of course, because we're in the recovery situation here, any winds could cause some further disruption. So we do have a yellow warning in place. Some sunny spells in the northeast. Temperatures well above average, 11, 12, maybe 13 Celsius. Through tomorrow evening, we'll see some further outbreaks of rain and drizzle across North Wales, Northern Ireland, further showers in the far northeast, where the winds will be easing down, generally staying fairly cloudy. So again, most places frost-free as we head into Wednesday. But Wednesday, again, predominantly cloudy, rain at times for Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, not as windy in the far northeast, just a few showers here. Some breaks in the south in the clouds could reveal a bit of sunshine, and it will be very mild again. Temperatures once more for the vast majority double figures, 11 in Hull, 10 in Cardiff, maybe 11 or 10 in the southwest of England as well. So very mild for the next couple of days. That mild air hangs on Thursday, but a cold front sweeps through, bringing a much colder feel by Friday.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints, over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone.